Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Cheyenne, will you just pop our slides up here when you have a moment, and we will get started. Excellent. So I always like to start us out with just a little bit of a few announcements and housekeeping. A friendly reminder here to put your questions in the Q&A section. The chat is very active, which we love, but we want to make sure that we're able to get to your questions and answer them in a timely manner. So please put those over in the Q&A section. There should be a black bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and put those there. Save the chat for the hilarious comments about which planet is in, retrograde or just connections with one another. That's one of the things that we love here at Nonprofit Vote and with National Voter Registration Day is not just that we are here to support you all as partners, but you all are here to support each other as well. And you have so much wisdom and experience to bring to the table. So please do make those connections in the chat and put your questions in the Q&A. Also, that React button exists. Please use it if if we're sharing something that makes a lot of sense to you that you've used before. Please do use that React button. Send us some hearts or some applause or whatever. Also, a friendly reminder that this webinar is being recorded and the link will be shared afterward. In addition to a bunch of the resources that we share today, if you happen to miss some of the resources that are shared in the chat, there's a lot of them that will be shared after the webinar. And as always, closed captioning is available via Zoom. Let's talk through our agenda here. So we're going to talk a little bit about nonprofit votes and about National Voter Registration Day. We're here to talk about GOTV, or Get Out the Vote. And some kind of last minute ideas and ways to incorporate civics into that. So we got a little bit of a civics review. Then we're going to really make that connection between some of those civics and then that connection to GOTV. And then we've got some plug and play ideas, things that you can do. It is not too late to do something for GOTV. So we've got lots of ideas for you. And then as always, we'll have an audience Q&A portion at the end. We will pull the questions that you put in the Q&A section and answer as many as possible with the time that we have left. And several of us come from an organizing background and we just cannot leave you without a call to action. So we'll make sure that we end there and then wrap us up within the hour. So that's what we're looking at for today. You've got your two speakers today. I'm Gwen Stembridge, the Director of Education and Partnerships at Nonprofit Vote. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Cheyenne Sapp, who's the campaign director for National Voter Registration Day. We get to work together a lot behind the scenes and don't get to do this as often together, but it's always fun when we do. And we figured that this is a really important thing that kind of both sides of our work touch on. So you just get us as a little duet today.
Hello, everyone. So nice to see all of you. And there's many National Voter Registration Day partners, so we're really excited for this conversation.
So a little bit about Nonprofit Vote. We're here to really equip you all as nonprofits to do the work that you need to do and infuse voter engagement into that. We've got a whole bunch of tools, a whole bunch of resources that I hope that you take advantage of. The vast majority of them are free. We have a couple of trainings and options like that we can come and do for you for a small fee, but really our resource library is free. These webinars are free and will continue to be. And it is all around this vision of building a more inclusive and representative democracy.
Thanks, Gwen. So let me tell you a little bit about what we were able to accomplish for this year. As many of you know, we had National Voter Registration Day celebration, the 13th year of it, on September 16th this year. It was fantastic, despite it being a very challenging year. We did it. We had 700,000 American citizens registered and updated their registration. And that was with the tremendous support of over 18,000 staff and volunteers. So a round of applause for you guys. Many of you participated and ran drives. We heard from many of you, especially League of Women Voters. You guys were out in the streets doing community engagement, voter registration, and just having very difficult conversations. So we thank you. Thousands of diverse partners participate annually. Next year, we're anticipating a huge year, and we are just excited to continue to have the support of national associations as well as the local community organizations that do this work every single day. So just want to say a big round of thank yous again, and we will see you again. Next year's date is September 15th, so mark your calendars now. And now we will get into the GOTV conversation. So this is what we have all been preparing for this year. It is a big conversation of what to just think about when we're going out into the field and talking to our communities. And we just want to make sure that you guys are prepared to have these conversations. So GOTV is very much part of the cycle of democracy. You are here. And we kind of move through the cycle every single year. There are no off election years for democracy. So many of you have your state and local elections happening this year. And although it was a quieter year because it wasn't a federal election year, we know that these elections matter the most. So from election day, we take it into advocacy and accountability. So the most important thing that we should be telling our communities around Get Out the Vote is that it does not stop with election day. It does not end after November 4th. After we get these elected officials in office, what's next? So making sure that we connect the dots to make sure they can have that conversation. And then after that, we get back into the period of not only voter registration, but voter education. So not just National Voter Registration Day next year, but everything between now and then is an opportunity for engagement, registration, and education. And then we get back to the GOTV cycle. So we want to tell you a little bit about what we think you can expect. So as the leaders in this world of voter engagement for nonprofits, we want to make sure that you feel well equipped to not only get out and have these conversations, but also encourage folks to register to vote for the following year. There's a lot that has changed with new voting laws. We know that there's over 100,000 elections happening across the country this year. And the most important thing that we want you to remember outside of GOTV being about connectivity is that volunteers should have the most updated and accurate information from your state and local election offices. So that means that you should be making sure that they are well educated, and we will provide those resources to make sure you have the top of the most important information. Safety concerns are a big one. Many voters are just generally concerned about issues like safety while voting. So be prepared to answer those questions and concerns. There's also just general voter fatigue. As we know, and you can probably attest to this, this has been a very stressful year for civics. So many communities feel skeptical and overwhelmed and disengaged due to a lot of the polarization that has happened this year and frequent messaging changes. So we want you to make sure that you are prepared to keep those conversations nonpartisan, but also keep them engaged and encouraged to continue to turn out. And then lastly, misinformation and distrust, which kind of goes right hand in hand with the civic stress. This outreach that you're doing in community may face some skepticism, especially in underserved or marginalized communities. So make sure that you are out as the trusted voice and continuing to build trust. Doing it early on and consistently is super critical for maintaining that engagement. And now I pass it to Gwen.
Great. Thanks, Cheyenne. Yeah, let's talk about how to use civics and kind of get back to some of the basics. I know some of us got some civics in high school and got some of that. Some of us, it may have been a while, or we may feel a little just disconnected from how these processes work. So I wanted to just start off here and really put that lens on it to make sure we're thinking about how our government systems work, because it's really hard to have trust in the process and trust that your vote is going to do anything if you don't understand really how that process works. I wanted to talk especially here at the local level. I feel like this is a hard one. We all kind of have a good understanding of, okay, we vote for president and a president gets elected. That is universal across these United States. But when it comes to the local level, a lot of things are different. And so it's hard to give any generalized information when it comes to the local level. But we're going to at least flag some things that you should be looking for and that you should be thinking about when it comes to these local elections. So there are all kinds of different position types. Some are elected, some are appointed, and then others are by application. And sometimes these city positions, even county, you may have a borough, you may have a township or a village. Some of those might be full-time positions, they might be part-time, or they might be volunteer positions. So we're really looking at kind of the wide gamut there. And then the power that those elected officials have also really varies by type of locality. For example, in some cities, the mayor is the city manager. They make the budget. They are responsible at the end of the day for how the city runs. Some are not. Some are really more of a figurehead, or they help to cut the ribbon as a new business comes into the community or something like that. Some counties have councils that can pass legislation. So you'll have your county level legislation, your city level legislation, and then the state that is over all of that. Some counties only have a commission or a similar body that can pass budget resolutions that relate to the county. So really want you to think about all of those different layers of government that might exist at the local level, and be sure that you're understanding what those layers are and how they might impact one another. And then also there's the election cadence that's a part of this. If you want to know how often you elect your city mayor, you're going to look to a city charter, which is a document usually part of the founding documents of a city, but then that does get edited and has been changed over time, I am sure, for many of the cities that you all live in. But that will determine the length that these local elected officials are serving. So you can look there. Some are elected every 2 years, some are elected every 4 years. There may even be longer terms at the local level. Really just like take a look at those and see. Also, a lot of them are happening in this year after the presidential election. There is a little bit of a movement to look at hosting those actually during presidential elections or mid-year elections so that you get a better turnout during that time. At the end of the day, though, I pulled out several different city organizational charts, and this is from Cooleyville, Texas, Champaign, Illinois, and then the school board the school district for Baltimore City. And what I loved about looking at all of these organizational charts is that at the top of each of them, really at the end of the day, who these elected officials report to is you all, the community, right? It is the residents of the community. It is the teachers, the students, the parents, it is whoever is a part of that community. So those elected leaders are really reporting to the voters. And it's a really good reminder that, if you're not voting, if you're not showing up, these folks really, your money is just, your tax dollars are kind of going wherever, and you are not not taking a say in that. So that's a point I just like to remind folks as you're talking to voters. It's a great opportunity to ensure that they remember that actually they have the power here. This is a tool that I'll share here. We typically use it kind of after the elections, but you can also use it before the elections to really think about what positions are up for election this year. And we've got a lot of tools you can use to find that, which will be a little bit later. But you can use this. I want you to think about what is that position? What are the qualifications that are necessary for that position? What are some of the skills that you might need? Is there, a planning commissioner or a public works commissioner? Roles like that I know before doing the research, I really wouldn't have a good idea of what was involved in the day-to-day of roles like that. So you can do a little bit of that research, find out what those roles are about, and fill some of that information in here to really organize it. You can do this with a group. I've done it with book clubs before, and all kinds of groups you can gather together and just work together to pull that information. And then the next piece I want to talk to you all about is about how do we make that connection from thinking about civics, thinking about those local elected positions, and then applying that to our GOTV plan. I found this quote from Zoltan Heinl, who's a professor at UC San Diego, and he said that turnout in local elections is generally quite low. On average, only about a quarter of registered voters turn out in these local elections, and even lower in some races like school board and all of that. So I really was struck by this number, only a quarter of those registered voters, because people tend to say, oh, this is not the presidential election. Either I don't care about it if it's not the presidential election, or I just don't know enough about who's running and where to get that information. So this is where nonprofits come in, where you all are really crucial in helping to balance out those numbers. Because at the local level, for these elections, often we get this small and unrepresentative set of folks determining what happens at the local level. So this is what Zoltan is sharing here, these populations who turn out to vote don't look like the larger population in those districts. And so it's a different group of people. It's not necessarily representative of the city and all of that. Great. So that's one piece of this. And then the other part where you can help to make that connection is that a lot of the decisions made about things that are impacting your everyday life are actually decisions that are made by local elected officials. So when I think about parks in my neighborhood, is the playground equipment safe and is it clean? Those are things that might be determined by the city or the county parks system. That is not something that the President of the United States is going to make a direct decision on. Yes, there may be some federal funding and some other things and some state funding that trickles down there. But at the end of the day, it's these local elected officials. It's your mayor, it's your city council, it might be your county council who are making those types of decisions. I also, when you think about emergency services, right? How long does it take an ambulance or a fire truck to reach your community? Those are things that are impacted by your local elected officials, right? How much funding is going into those services? Do you have maybe a public safety officer or someone like that that is part of the city that is determining those things? Employment. Is your city working to recruit companies that will bring jobs to your community, that will help its economy? Does your city have consistent trash and recycling pickup? Are they prioritizing safe air and clean water and all of that? All of those are things that impact our daily lives and can be determined at the local level by these local elected officials. So you all as nonprofit leaders can help to make those connections and make that bridge to help folks realize how important these local elections are. I'm going to pass on to Cheyenne next to tell us a little bit more about the local level.
Awesome. Thanks, Gwen. So 5 key talking points about these local elections. You want to really reinforce, like Gwen said, that your voice is powerful. So when you go out into the community, you have to have that trusted voice, but also the confidence to make them believe that their voices deserve to be heard. And again, in a challenging year like what we had this year, it really is hard to carry that, but it's also really important to make sure that that is reinforced. So the messaging around that is kind of like really the foundation for how you have these conversations and craft your talking points. And then from there, local elections are really where trust and democracy begins. Every step in this election is a step towards a stronger democracy. We have to persist so that democracy can persist. It really does start with us. Your voice and your vote carry even more weight locally. We are getting into the state and federal election years coming up. So making sure that our local leaders are listening so that when we get into next year, we are prepared and ready. And local elections really build the foundation for national change. So we know that, and we'll talk about this later in the deck, in the presentation, that these local elections really do impact the state and federal election outcomes. So we are preparing for that. So kind of when you crack your talking points, make sure that it's grounded in what's to come. And then lastly, elections are really a chance to celebrate our communities and our democracy, because these are the elected officials that we'll be engaging with on a day-to-day basis. So just some talking points that as you kind of think about your preparation and your plans, again, we want to make sure that you go out feeling confident. So these are just ways that you can kind of get your volunteers prepared for those types of conversations. And we have this really great Why Vote tool, so be sure to check it out. Again, all of the resources will be linked with the deck, so you'll have access to everything. Nonprofit leaders like you guys can help voters make the connection between local services and the elected officials who make the decisions that impact the community. So we have like this really cool graphic to just show, and I know someone asked that in the chat, to just show how these correlations happen and kind of illustrate what Gwen was touching on. If you have any questions for us during this presentation, make sure to just drop them into the Q&A. We're coming up on the Q&A section of the presentation, so we want to make sure that we capture any questions that you have. So drop them in the Q&A box there. And now we'll get into the GOTV idea bank. So we will not leave you without giving you some ideas, some tangible ideas for how you can do this engagement. So number one, education, right? We want to make sure that voters feel confident again, but also equipped to go out to their poll sites. No surprises. Let's make sure that they are checking their sample ballots before they go. Let's make sure they're making a plan. If they're not voting early, make sure they have a plan for getting to their poll site on election day. Learning about the positions are really important too. So make sure that you check your locality websites to see if there's job descriptions for the position, and share those with your community. So read any published material in advance, and this will help you better understand who the candidates are and help voters make the right choices. And then lastly, of course, learn about the candidates themselves. So you can use key resources like Ballotpedia, Ballot Ready, Vote 411. Of course, we link all of these for you in this deck, so you'll have handy access to them. But these are really great resources to just make sure that the voters have the information about parties and where the candidates stand and what their platforms are. So as much as possible, just make sure that you can put all of this in their inboxes, so maybe in their emails or actually in their hands through fact sheets. And it's not too late to do some plug and play, right? So here are some things that you can do now to get people out to the polls. So you can start by sharing the election day date just as a reminder. Voter registration in most states has passed or is coming up on the deadline, so make sure that you are familiar with that and pull that most accurate information. You can do some quick flyers promoting the date. That can be a print flyer, or that can be like displayed on social media on your pages. We'll talk a little bit about coalition building at the end of this so that you guys can cross-share materials with folks that are around you in your state. You can promote the 866 Our Vote hotline, which is fantastic for answering any questions that arise on voting on election day. You can host a Why I Vote story series. This is a really cool digital series that you can do to kind of get community members a little bit more engaged and talking about reasons why they vote. And then if you work at a corporation, I know a lot of this language has been geared towards nonprofits, but if you work at a corporation or a business, you can encourage staff and volunteers to share their voting plans on social media. So again, this being an election year that is local, there may not be a lot of attention on it. So make sure that you can do what you can to kind of push attention in that direction. And that could be just like local personal stories about why people vote. You can post a daily countdown to election day on social media. Everyone loves a countdown. You could even post one for like the 2026 midterms, but a countdown is just a great visual tool. And then a few more around social. So if social media is your strength, take advantage of it. You can post some reels, you can do some graphics, you can use Canva, which is absolutely free to create a lot of these graphics. And then you can also kind of work with other organizations that do the same. Collaborate with small businesses, share those voting deadlines and reminders. Do not assume that voters know that there's an election happening on November 4th. This is a quiet year, so do what you can to amplify that. And then one of the last ones is to just team up with rideshare companies like Lyft and Uber who offer free rides to the polls. That's a great way to get people to engage. And if you have no election happening next month, no problem. We still wanted to include you as part of this conversation. There are over 100,000 elections happening across the country this year. But if you don't have one, here's a few things that you can still do to stay engaged. So plan for 2026. It's never too early to make sure the pieces are together. This is a little bit where we touch on like the coalition building. So reach out to local organizations to start putting together your resources for next year. This will also help strengthen your plan, maybe help you assess some roadblocks that may come up, and then also be prepared to handle them. And then lastly, use any opportunity this year to just make sure voters are vote ready for next year. So that can be voter registration, that could be education, that can be anything in between. If you want to think long term, now's a great opportunity while folks may just be aware of what's going on with state and local elections. We just came off of National Voter Registration Day, and we saw that 78% of surveyed partners feel prepared to register voters in 2026. So that is very encouraging, very promising. Thank you to all of you that completed that survey, and we will make sure that you continue to feel prepared with the resources that we'll make available to you. And we want to close this section out with just looking ahead to the 2026 midterm. So here are some more talking points. If you don't have an election this year, no problem. But when you're out talking to voters, and this could be at community events or maybe, meeting voters at the supermarket, wherever you can interface with voters, here are some additional talking points where you can connect this year to 2026. So community power builds through everyday participation. That is number one. When voters engage in these local elections, we establish the habit, and we need that habit so that we can show up for next year. Local elections really do set the stage for national change. So that's everything from education to housing and community safety. They happen this year, but those decisions will build the foundations that we'll face nationally next year. And then, as many of you know, there's some key states that have elections this year that will influence the federal landscape for next year. Those are gubernatorial races, those are court elections, and definitely a lot of ballot measures. So those are all on the table right now, and those will set the tone for how we go into the 2026 midterms. So just some key talking points so that you can fold into the conversations if you have an election this year, or if you don't. These are great talking points that voters will remember when they're thinking about their plans for next year. I'll pass it to Gwen.
Thank you, Cheyenne. I love how you frame that. And it's such a good reminder that just because National Voter Registration Day has passed for this year doesn't mean that you can't register people for next year, doesn't mean that you can't make this an ongoing practice, right? Organizing all of this work can happen year round because voting is important at all times. And if we don't connect it to our real everyday lives, then it's if we do connect it, then it's going to make it even more real and make folks more likely to show up and understand the importance of that when we get to the next election. So thank you so much for that reminder. This next portion, we're just going to kind of give you a lot of resources. So, and as a reminder, all of this will be included in a follow-up email. You'll have all of these slides and everything. But wanted to just give you a few reminders. So this webinar is this, not your average GOTV webinar, because we really wanted to focus on civics and on the local level. But we have a couple of webinars from the past few years on some GOTV resources and Get Out the Vote resources. So please do use those. You can access them through National Voter Registration Day or through the Nonprofit Vote webinar series or our free resource library. There's also some information about just civics and making those connections, connecting the dots. Cheyenne did a great webinar at the beginning of this year that was all about connecting those dots. And I think a lot of times voters just need that extra little connection to help spark their excitement or their sense of urgency or just motivation to get to the polls. So please do check those out. There are some more general ones as well. We did a great one this year on just staying nonpartisan, had our friends from a local from a law firm that we work with really closely, Harman Curran. And so Stephanie gave a great overview of just staying nonpartisan. And that's a great reminder, great resources there in all of that. So those are some of the webinars that exist. So you can put one of those on as you're working on something else. Not that I would ever encourage you. I'm sure all of you are just paying ultimate 100% attention all the time on webinars. But if it's a review for you, sometimes it can help to just have that on and get some of those tips. And then we also have some written resources as well for you here in our nonprofit vote resource library. We have a ton of resources and they are free. Please do not reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. Take our resources, utilize them in any way that you can. That is why they are there. So a couple of just of those that I want to highlight. We've got some 7 tips on GOTV that just gives you some easy, quick things there, similar resources to what we have what we shared today. We've got some tips specifically on absentee and mail-in ballots. Voting at home is a great thing to do if that is available in your state. Gives you that time to be able to do some of the research, which is always great. We've got that active listening tool that helps to guide you through a conversation as you're talking with voters and reminds you the types of things that voters might be going through that would prevent them from having access to voting. Or thinking that they don't have access to voting. It helps make some of those connections. We also have some email scripts. If you at your organization, if you're the leader of your organization and you really care about this, want to get the word out to your staff, but you're like, if I just have to write one more email, oh my goodness, I'm gonna just explode. Please do utilize our email scripts as well. This gives you a template. Customize it in the ways that you would like and just get it out there. That is the goal there. We've got all kinds of tips about how to talk to voters, tips for active tabling. If you're bringing a table out to a community festival or somewhere, please do set that up. But we've got just some tips to help get people engaged when they come to your table. Also, if you are in particularly working with residents experiencing homelessness, then we've got some tools there too. We love our friends at National Coalition for the Homeless, and there's several organizations have great resources on that as well. If there is if you're trying to look at what your ballot is and just find that sample ballot, our friends over at Ballot Ready and at Ballotpedia, all you have to do, you send your voter to that website. They put in their address and it will tell them what's going to be on their sample ballot. This is a really great resource. I know I have been in the position before when I get to the voting booth and I say, what, we're voting on judges? Or one year there was a coroner on and I was like, how do I even know? I had no idea that I had to decide on that. So really like looking at those sample ballots ahead of time can make a really big difference in your ability to then go through, do the research and know what you're voting for. We love our friends over at the League of Women Voters. They've got some great nonpartisan voter guides that are wonderful. They're available in multiple languages and different states across the country as well. You can find your state and local elections offices at vote.gov that is there. So that's a great resource as well. And then voter ID, our friends over at Vote Writers. I know there's been a lot of questions this past year, in particular about voter IDs. We've had the SAVE Act. We've had some other things that have just come into the conversation. And so there's lots of questions about that, especially around proof of citizenship and things like that. So please do visit the resources from our friends at Vote Writers so that you can understand a little bit more about what is needed as far as voter ID. All right, so that's a lot of resources to throw at you. And again, we are going to make sure that you have all of these in the email that you'll follow up with. All right, the next portion here that we're going to focus on is our Q&A. So if you've not had a chance yet, please do add questions into the Q&A box and we will get to them here as we go. So yeah, first question on here, I might actually pass this to you, Cheyenne. Someone asked, do you have a resource kit for social media for local elections? Do you want to take that one,
Yes.
Cheyenne?
That's a great question, Karen. Thank you for asking. We do have a social media kit for National Voter Registration Day. And what's really cool about the kit is that everything is customizable in Canva. So we have already created the design and you can take the text and you can edit it. You can add your logo, whatever you think might be really helpful to make the information tailored to your community. That is a perfect tool for you guys to use. And that is absolutely available to you already on National Voter Registration Day. So as part of this presentation, we'll be sure to share that with you. But as long as you have access to Canva, which is free, you can make those edits within the app. So I definitely encourage you all to use that because it's pre-designed. So thank you for asking, Karen.
I love that so much. And it's this is again why we exist. We exist here to give you all these resources. So please do utilize them. Don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. We are not offended if you use the same font or the whatever, like just get the information out there. At the end of the day, that's what's most important. The next question on here is about finding candidates to run for office or fill boards and commissions. Can nonprofit organizations play a role? How would you suggest or might that look? We get more engagement from voters and even higher turnout when the ballot is full from top to bottom and candidates are engaging with voters. I will happily take this one because this has also been on my mind. As you pointed out, Sarah, there are lots of positions that kind of go empty or go unopposed, especially at the local level. And so finding folks to fill those roles is really crucial to our democracy in general. The point of our democracy is that we have choice and that we get to have a say in that. But if there's just one person running, we don't really get that choice, do we? So We actually, you're in my head here because we're working on putting together a webinar about that very thing. We have lots of partners, which we can reference some of those. We'll put some in the follow-up email, but there are lots of organizations that will support individuals who are interested in running. I'll name a few just off the top of my head, but know that this is not an exhaustive list. There are several organizations that will support women who want to run. We are great partners with Latinas Represent that works with Latinas who want to run. Also, there's the Victory Institute for those within the LGBTQ plus community who are interested in running. There are all kinds of organizations and resources out there. So yes, we are working on a webinar about those, and we've got a few of those resources out there as well. And thank you so much, Sugalema, for adding some of these links in the chat. She's so quick to get them all out, which is great and much appreciated. So yes, great question. And if you know of others that might be a good fit, please do reach out because especially nonprofit leaders have a lot of the leadership skills that it takes to do this work at the local level. And so that's one of the things I'm really interested in is how do we get our nonprofit leaders to see themselves in these roles, right? If the only way you see yourself in this role is if you're have been working in big business, or if you are an attorney, or if you have some other, stereotypical high-powered job, I would argue that our nonprofit leaders actually have really high-powered jobs and have the capacity, the leadership capacity to do that. Do they have the time capacity? I think that is a thing to consider. And so really lean into that if you are interested. I would just encourage anybody to do that and stay tuned for more information. But great question. Thank you. The next one on here is about, so why aren't these types of activities provided before early voting occurs? Many folks who do vote do so early and are not likely to go through the steps to change their vote, even if they might have been willing to vote for a different candidate. How do we get candidate information before voting begins? And Cheyenne, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we have a great resource through Vote 411 where you can get a lot of that candidate information. League of Women Voters creates these awesome nonpartisan voting guides as well as Ballotpedia, so you can get a preview of what will be on your ballot. So I think that's probably the best direction to send you in, is to make sure that folks are getting that information as early as possible. So if we have an election happening on election day in November, and you feel like folks have already voted early, then that may be a good learning lesson for next year. But if you feel like you still have an opportunity to get that information and resources over to them, I would definitely encourage you to do so. The Ballotpedia is a really awesome resource because you're able, again, to see that sample ballot. So this is a great way to make sure that voters have the education and engagement prior to showing up. Again, because we don't want them to have any surprises. And just like you said, Rosanna, they will not be able to change their vote. So just making sure that they have all of the information as early as possible is really important.
Great. Thank you, Cheyenne. Yeah, next question on here. Do you have a training series that we can use to train our members to increase their confidence to speak at Get Out the Vote events about the importance of voting and slide decks? So I'll say, just from the nonprofit vote side of things, we've got a lot of resources that you are welcome to use. We also do some trainings for organizations if you're interested in bringing us in. We've got a variety of topics. We can do everything from staying nonpartisan to voter registration to, get out the vote and some light advocacy, talking to voters. We tend to make these trainings really interactive. So, and just really equip you with everything that you need. Cheyenne, anything you would add to that?
No, nothing to add to that. That's a perfect answer.
Great. The next question is about Canva training. So a little off subject, but relevant. Canva training is hard to find. Do you know of any trainings targeted toward voting that people could participate in? Cheyenne, yeah, you want to take that?
Thank you for following up. I know you said a little off subject, but that's a great question because we do get asked that. So I don't know of any Canva trainings that are relevant specifically to like voter outreach, but I will do some research on that. And if it is helpful, we can give you some guidelines for like how to use Canva because it sounds like it might be a little bit of a learning curve. So that's something that we can work on. I will drop our email in the chat so you have access to it. It's info at National Voter Registration Day. And we will try to connect you with some Canva resources, maybe like some 101s, some 102s, so that you know how to populate the template that we have available. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier.
Great. Yeah, the tools are easy and accessible in many ways, and also you've got to have a little bit of that like basic knowledge to get in there. So yeah, hopefully you find some resources that are helpful. The next question on here is this person said, one concern we have is if not all candidates provide statements regarding their platforms or reasons to vote for them. Would you agree if we do not have responses from everyone, we should not have any candidate info? I can take that. It's a great question, very specific. It seems like around maybe candidate forums or candidate surveys or things like that. And best practice with that is to make sure that you are inviting everyone, that you are treating each of those candidates equally. Let me also just preface all of that by saying none of this is legal advice. None of this should be intended to be used as legal advice. We are not attorneys in this. But we can tell you what some best practices are, and that is that equal communication with them. If you don't receive responses from some of those candidates, then you are responsible for making the call at that point, right? If you're only receiving, 1 out of 2, I would cancel the event. If you are receiving, if you're doing 5 out of 9, I would maybe consider that. There are some things, some parameters that you can use. For instance, what candidates are polling really well. If you decide to if you're doing a candidate forum and you decide to say, okay, we're only going to take the candidates that are polling above this certain amount, or we're only going to take the candidates who have raised this certain amount of money, you can find one of those nonpartisan ways to determine and decide who you're going to choose for that candidate forum, then those are some just ideas for how to approach that. But I'll also just shout out our friends at Alliance for Justice and Boulder Advocacy. They have a wonderful legal line that you can call to ask more specific questions about your specific situation. We can talk kind of generally across the board there. So I hope that answers that. I'm looking through to see if there are any other questions that we may have missed. Oh, actually, so one here just popped up, and I actually think this one's pretty important. Leonard asked, judicial candidates seem to be the last to be covered, maybe, if at all, on a ballot. Is there a good way to increase awareness? Cheyenne, did you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
I would say that that's a great point, Leonard. And that's a very important position, right? So it is a really good opportunity for local organizations to maybe amplify and bring awareness to the judicial candidates. So if they're not covered, maybe you can kind of speak to that in any community forums that you have. You could do a fact sheet on it. You can do some social media around it. Any noise that you can drum up to remind voters that they'll also see a judicial candidate again, so that there's no surprises when they go to vote. That's a really good opportunity, one, for you to engage with voters a little bit closer and have some conversations, but also to show that you are a trusted voice and that you're informed and that you want to bring the information to them. Gwen, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just say I agree with you, Leonard. It's hard. We don't often get as much information there. Sometimes the parties are not, if they're, especially if they're affiliated with a party, if they're a nonpartisan position. Yeah, that is just it is tricky. But there are I have looked. There are some bar associations that will make either endorsements or will do, candidate forums or things like that. So I might look at some of those bar associations, either locally or particularly affiliated ones that might be a good resource there for judges. And our friends at Ballotpedia will often do information about those as well. And your local media, sometimes local newspapers will do, a review or sometimes endorsements or things like that. Yeah, great. Yeah, and Robert, I see you put that in the chat too. So yeah, I'm with you. All of these are really great questions. Um, the other question that did come in the chat here was about just trainings from Nonprofit Vote. And I'll just say here, we've gotten a couple questions about that. We're happy to be available for trainings. Please do reach out to us at info@nonprofitvote.org, and we'll talk through the possibilities there. So we would love to bring this information or more information to whatever audience you have to get the word out. Great. These are such great questions. We're going to close out the Q&A portion of the webinar today. And I can't leave us without a call to action. So those of you who showed up today, you are already part of our resource list and you're getting information, I hope. But we want to invite you also to take the pledge to do nonpartisan voter engagement within the next year. It is crucial for nonprofits to continue to be that trusted voice who show up for our community, for those who have been left out of systems. And it's important for us to ensure that we have this representative democracy where all voices are heard. So please do take that pledge and join us in this work, and that will get you access to a lot of other resources as well. So that is it for our time today. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your really insightful questions. Many thanks to Sugalema Lynch, who has been supporting us backstage today, and to my fabulous colleague Cheyenne at National Voter Registration Day. We're so grateful for our partnership and look forward to increasing that and growing that in the next year. Anything else, Cheyenne, to wrap us
No,
up?
thank you all again for those of you who participated in making National Voter Registration Day a huge success. We will see you again next year where we are counting on you to continue this. So stay encouraged, and we're just really grateful for you all for being here and for continuing this work.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a good one. We'll see you November 4th or earlier. Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.